Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Questions with an Expert. My name is Colby, and I'm the Zoology Collections Manager at the Milwaukee Public Museum. This week's question with an expert is, what is a collections manager? If you've been to the museum, you know that there's a lot of material on display on the floors. But did you know that that's less than 10% of the museum's collections? The other 4 million objects are stored behind the scenes in collections areas all over the building and are cared for by people like me. As a collections manager, I think of my job in 3 main parts. The first is physical care of the object. So that's making sure that the object is housed appropriately. So if it's a fluid collection, it's stored in the right fluid. It's got a good lid on the jar so it's not going to dry out. If it's a dry collection, it's making sure that it's in the right kind of storage. So in a drawer, in a cabinet, or on a shelf, and protected from dust and light and whatever else it needs. The second part of my job I think of as data management. So all of those specimens in our collections, and in the zoology collections there's about 2 million specimens, have some kind of data associated with them. So it might be where they were collected, who collected them, when they were collected, what they are. Sometimes there's a little bit more data, so if they're a parasite of something, what were they feeding on? If it's something that's a pollinator, what was it pollinating, or what plant was it feeding on? And that data is really what makes these specimens valuable to science, because a scientist can come in and put together a huge data set and ask some really big questions with that data. So having that data clean and accessible is really, really important. If the data is not clean, you can't get anything out of it, really. And if it's not accessible, it doesn't do anybody any good. So we take steps to make sure that everything is spelled correctly in the database, and things like dates and places are standardized. And then for accessibility, we share this data. So the closest place to home to get it is actually on our own website at symbiota.mpm.edu. But we also share to larger data aggregators all over the country and all over the world. The third part of my job is all about use. As I mentioned, if the data isn't accessible, it's not really useful. And if the specimens aren't accessible, they're also not really very useful. So if a researcher needs something from the collection, they have a question that can only be answered by seeing the specimen, I make that happen. So in some cases I might mail them the specimen, and that involves packing it up very carefully and mailing it and making sure it gets there. Sometimes they want to come to the museum and use specimens, and so I would facilitate that visit as well. And that is collections management in a nutshell. So thank you for joining me with this week's Questions with an Expert, and we'll see you next time.